Folks, I kind of was cleaning up my closet and I came upon this article that I had was written by Ruchir Sharma, which was 9th July 2012. 2012. This is, remember, before COVID, which came after that. Before she unsheathed his claws, and before the thought process in the US did a 180-degree turn as far as denial of technology was concerned, and all kinds of other impediments were placed on China. And this is what he writes: 10 reasons to believe in China's slowdown story. China is moving to a lower growth trajectory and may soon vacate the position as the world's fastest growing economy. The question is, which country will move into the slot? It seems India has, right? And why he said that? Too rich to grow at a miracle pace, because they'd already achieved a particular level. Too much concrete. I mean, they'd overbuilt infrastructure. The pool of rural labor runs dry. Absolutely no labor. The foundation of youth runs dry because of the one-child policy. The new normal is emerging markets, the invisible debt problem, and that we all know what it's done. The real estate bubble, it's holding up but can burst anytime. The misplaced faith in command and control economic system, which has only gotten worse, if you remember, with Xi's overbearing policies on private sector players and technology. So it's only gotten worse. Everything has gotten worse, and COVID has multiplied it. The BRICS, not the BRICS, the BRI, which is really not delivering any returns. The amount of money owed by the international the small countries to China is unbelievable. How are they going to be able to balance their books? Nobody knows. You really, if Gambia owes you say a few billion, you get some piece of real estate in return. That's not that's not going to do anything to your cash flow, is it, right? And then, as Pranab Dal Samta writes, mind the gap, it matters. This is one of the reasons why what Ruchir said in 2012 is totally true. He says, mind the gap, it matters. In the US-China, India-China matrix, competition is the new conflict. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's US visit has put in place a framework to correct India's strategic asymmetry with China. This provides a pivotal moment to reorganize India's tech, military and economic resources in a manner that both India and USA combine to achieve two shared objectives: narrow the India-China gap while widening the US-China gap. That is the reason the US is going all the way. All the way. That's why both of us are aligned, right? Has been to increase China. Okay. And then we have behind a birthday, the other thing that's fallen apart is Putin, and because of what's happened with Wagner, what's happening in Ukraine. Behind a birthday wish, Putin and Xi share delicate bonds. A mutual interest is complicated by major asymmetries. And then you have this, and it says Saibal Das Gupta. He says Putin's egg in one basket. The Wagner mutiny has shaken China's faith in Russian leader and has it nervous at home. He says millions of Chinese have high regard for Putin. Beijing is worried the mutiny could reduce people's faith in strong leadership such as its own. The mutiny comes after the Ukrainian army exposed vulnerabilities in the Russian military. China now has serious doubts about unity in Russian forces. Let me also tell you, there are serious doubts in the quality of Chinese military too, folks. There are serious. Let me just say, I came back, well, he wrote it in 2012. I came back to India in 91, 92. I was part of a project in the US for my company, which was outsourcing, offshoring all the manufacturing that used to happen in Pennsylvania. One of the plants that were being set up was in Guangzhou. It was a car assembly plant. And you saw all that you saw was bonded labor. These shiploads of busloads of girls would come, only girls. They would come, they would not have any days off, they would not have, even if they had days off, they were replacements. They were not set 8-hour shift or 10-hour shift. It was basically goal-based. I mean, whether it took you 12 hours to produce or 13 hours to produce, that's what happened. It was bonded labor, and you paid money to the state, right? And they distributed it the way you wanted. The similar thing in 2008 when I went, when we were trying to set up a garment plant here, we saw the kind of pass that Americans used to give the Chinese. They would look the other way. Labor conditions were terrible. And one of the biggest things that came out when you spoke to them is turnover. They didn't understand the idea of turnover. In India, you have that guy come to your line one day, the next day he's gone for another job, right? Then in a country where you got to put your finger up and take permission to take a leak, here they would just get up at random, break the line, efficiency is down. What about that? All the quarters were at the back. They had no leave. They took leave only once. And if you have that kind of planning, hey, your efficiency can be anything. They were by no means superhuman, which everybody else was making them out to be. Super efficient, absolutely not. When you have a danda on your head, anything is possible, right? Especially a draconian danda like the Communist Party. Anything is possible, right? And we gave into that. We had all these guys sitting here. You know, C.A. Uday Bhaskar was leading that commentary, and there were Prem Shankar Jha, there were guys on the. Everybody was over the hill about, oh, how China is such a great place. And I said, hey, it's not possible. And that's what happened to us. The moment you gave a pass and you said, yeah, this guy, we can't get there, right? So let's hunker down and, pretend that we are weaker, and then all our decisions were taken accordingly. You got to get up and fight. And exactly what we're doing now. We should stand up to the bully, which we do, but then without naming it, right? The new give and take. This is Arun Prakash, right? China's challenge to existing world order leaves US and India with no choice but to strengthen their relationship. He says, a similar situation prevailed in early April 1942 as Imperial Japan, seeking a greater Asia co-prosperity sphere, overran Malaya, Singapore and Burma and devastated the British Eastern Fleet, sinking the aircraft carrier HMS Hermes of Ceylon as Japanese bombs fell on the east coast ports of Visakhapatnam and Kakinada. India steeled itself for an invasion. An alarmed US President Franklin Roosevelt, fearful of losing India's massive contribution to the Allied war effort, was earnest but futile appeals to Churchill to accord dominion status to India. He also extended to India the Lend-Lease program, under which it received munitions for the army and industrial materials for its ordnance factories, railways and ports. As payment, India provided 280 million worth of rations, goods, services and real estate to American and Kuomintang Chinese forces camping in Bihar. How many of us know that, right? Then he says, as far as India is concerned, the roots of Sino-Indian discord go back to China's annexation of Tibet and grant of asylum to the Dalai Lama in 1959. But despite the balance of power heavily tilted in China's favor, it is incumbent upon India as a nuclear weapon state, a significant economic, military and demographic entity, and above all a democracy, to stand up to its hegemonic neighbors. Hear that, Jaishankar. And he says, this arms dependency, once a minor handicap, has now become an albatross around India's neck, since not only has Russia allied itself with China, its military-industrial complex is no longer capable of supporting India's armed forces due to the Ukraine war and US sanctions. Hear that again, right? So all the guys are going after predators should just close it. We must never forget that having licensed production thousands of aircraft, aero engines, ships, tanks, diesel engines and electronic avionic devices of Russian, British and French design at home, we failed to ensure that our technical fraternity acquired the skills to design, develop or innovate on their own. Now, why did we do that is an interesting point. This time around, we must incorporate clear guarantees to ensure that value addition takes place in terms of key technology, skills and knowledge being imparted to technical personnel. Finally, the foundational agreements provide for much give and take between the militaries in many spheres, and we must take as much as we give. Absolutely. And then you have this, right, as Vivek Achure, fighting fire with fire. Obama was out of line in commenting on India's secular nature. The question though is, if the Modi government has been wise in responding in the manner it has, or if it would have been wiser to ignore, it should have been wiser to ignore, because what's happening there is important. India caucus brings bills to fast-track weapons sales. IF plans biggest air exercise forces for 12 nations to attend. Among others, Air Force of France, Australia, the US and the UK are likely to participate. Exercise. US deal to help Tejas Mk2 fly in 2025. This is the GE engine. Be built by KAD, and the technology is going to go to HAL, and it also helps this. India offers to set up production facilities for LCA copters in Egypt. Also further helps this. India, Malaysia, DEFMIN, defense minister level talks focus on LCA and Su-30 MKM fleet. The engine, right? And here's another thing where the Americans are coming to our aid. Ahead of G20 meet, US force trains NSG army to counter SCBRNE threats, right? India finally names it in a first. India clearly tells China to abide by UNCLOS on SCS. Russia ties should not hinder our relationship with US, says Jaishankar. While that's happening, and you're talking about the GE engines, you know who's lost out. Safran's big India move, MRO facility in Hyderabad, but they're not getting the engine deal. Too bad, the French just stuck on for too long. Next stage in strategic ties to be unveiled during PM's France visit, says Envoy. Important France for the Indo-Pacific. But let's not go too heavily rely on them for defense equipment, because unless you become part of the supply chain of global arms supply, you are not going to get that technology that you want. You're not going to develop the fraternity, technological fraternity in India. And then you have Enrique Manalo, who's the ambassador, Philippines ambassador. Partnership for the future. It's time to realize the potential of India-Philippine relations. Important, because right now the Marcos, the president of Philippines, has moved back away from China to the United States, and India, United States, and we've supplied the BrahMos missiles and some lot of intel equipment to Philippines. To harness the power of the Indo-Pacific as a catalyst for growth, more intensified regional cooperation is essential. Stronger economic integration, improved connectivity, and increased innovation are key to buttressing the region of a global economic powerhouse. As champions of the rule of law and inclusive multilateralism, the Philippines and India play important roles in this respect. India, Philippines to upgrade defense partnership, boost maritime security. Putin briefs Wagner on revolt, Ukraine situation. It's down the tubes, right? And I'm while we may have called Putin should have been desperate to call us. Indo-Russian NSA talk ties. Putin hails Make in India. What is he helping us make in India? I really want to know, except for the BrahMos, right? Putin's riding for now, writes Jane Kinnimont. Wagner's march to Moscow fizzled out, but it may give other groups in Russia, political or private military, the idea that change at the top is possible, and even the Chinese are worried. And this area is critical now, this Middle East for us, because the US is vacating, the vacuum is being created, India and the US are stepping in together. PM to visit US, Egypt next week, lead yoga, that's okay. India, Egypt to push trade to 12 billion in next 5 years. Egypt to offer dedicated industrial cluster to India and Suez Canal economic zone. Very important. UAE and Qatar reopen embassies as ties improve after years of rift. Lots of shuffle in the Middle East, right? And India is well placed because it's got great relationships with all. Oman, Israel, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. India, Israel firm up mobility pact, look to expand bilateral ties. And stuff happening in our region, right? India, Nepal, Bangladesh finalized draft of power trade deal. Bangladesh will soon import power from Nepal via India. And trade deals continue. India, Australia trying to finalize trade deal by end of year, says MD. These are critical things for India. All of what I've read out here. But just a minute, you need to call out China as your major enemy or challenger. It's after all, it's sitting on all your land. It's destroying. It's not taking the LAC for. It's destroyed the relevance of the LAC. You know, and you have to get yourself ready to take them on. It's not going to be Pakistan you should be with. It is China. 3 cheers, Jai Hind.